Hello and welcome back to How to Connect with Humans. This is Series 6, Episode 5. Hello, Wayne. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well.
Good.
Thank you. So I'm very well and I'm really happy. I'm very inspired. We are very thrilled to have our guest speaker today. Today we have Ankush Jain. And Ankush, or Kush, as many people call him, um, is a coach of coaches. He's a fantastic man. He's a fantastic father and a husband. And he's going to tell us about a little bit about his own story. But we can tell you about what Ankush is, at least he's been for me. Um, and our episode today is called Our True Potential. And about 9 years ago, when I was just starting and hearing about the principles and starting to know a few people and getting around the conference in London, the annual conference, and I met Ankush, and then very sweetly he offered me a call to have a chat, and he was so kind and so lovely. But especially what he did is he showed me that I have a lot more possibilities and a lot more potential than I was actually seeing. And that was absolutely essential for me. There was a very important moment in my life. And he did this as out of the generosity of his heart and his time as he was starting coaching people. So it's an absolute honor and a pleasure to have you here, Ankush. Thank you very much. How are you?
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm really pleased to be here, and thank you for such a warm and really generous introduction. Yeah, it's amazing, right? How we can have conversations such a long time ago, and they kind of ripple outwards, for so many years later. And certainly that's been the case with me, and things that I recall from years ago too. So yeah, really pleased to be here.
So you wanted to talk about our true potential, which you're a master of, because I've seen so many people, and particularly so many men, um, that you have worked with, and you specialize on communication and connection, which is absolutely our cup of tea, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about your experience around that?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much to say, but I guess we can start with that. A lot of my coaching, or you could almost say all of my coaching, is really me talking to myself, right? As is often the case. And so, my background is, or certainly what my story was for a long time, was that, I was someone who was constantly told, could do better. I think that was, in junior school, for years and years and years, it was like a standard line on my school reports, could do better. And so I always felt like I wasn't really living up to my true potential, whether that was, academically or in sports or, just in life. And this seemed to follow suit, where I didn't quite get into the university I really wanted to get into. I didn't quite get the job that I wanted to get. I was always, close, but not close enough. Um, and there was this kind of really deep ingrained story in me that perhaps I wasn't good enough, and I really had this belief for so much of my life that I needed to have certain external things occur or happen in my life for me to be good enough. And when I was younger, it was about, getting certain grades in school so that my parents would be proud of me. Later on, it became getting into the right university. And then after that, it was like getting the right job, meeting the right woman, driving the right car. And the funny thing was, I did have successes, but it was never enough. And that feeling, stayed with me. I got into personal development when I was 19, and I spent most of my hobby time in my 20s was on personal development of one way, shape, or form. And I was trying to catch the metaphorical carrot that was kind of dangling in front of me, and you never get it, right? And so when I first came across the 3 principles, which was really by accident in 2012, I joined a what I thought was a coach training program with Jamie Smart. It was really a 3 principles program in disguise. I had no idea what the 3 principles were. I had no intention even of that. I just wanted to be a coach, and yet I started learning about this stuff, and it was immediately impactful. And I, at that point in my life, I didn't think that I would come across something that would be remarkably impactful, because I spent 10, 11 years looking into psychology and personal development, spirituality, and I thought I'd kind of learned it all. I thought, broad brush, I've kind of covered the main bits, and I wasn't even looking for any more personal development. But when I did come across the 3 principles, I started to see that, there was kind of what I was achieving in the world, like whatever, like here, there was what I thought I could achieve, and it was here. And all of a sudden it was like, no, the sky's the limit. There's way more that is possible for me. Because it wasn't coming from a place of lack, right? It was like all these beliefs that I had about myself, all these stories, I started to see that they were just that, beliefs and stories, and they weren't a reflection of who I really was. And again, not in a trite intellectual way, but really a deep truth, a deep knowing, that just became more and more obvious for me. And so fast forward a few years, and I quit my job and try to make a go of this thing called coaching. And I did a group. I started doing groups for men, or what I call immersions. And it made sense to do those because I knew I wasn't an expert on a bunch of stuff. But what I did know was me, right? I knew what would appeal to me. I knew what I would value. And so that's why I started working with men, because I started creating things or these groups that I would have wanted to attend. And I say to my clients now that there's a hint of jealousy in me that they get to attend what I create, because I am creating it for myself, and I would love to be a student at one of my own events. But I mean, I get so much out of them anyway, because everything that I'm sharing, I'm getting for me too. And I know kind of Sydney Banks spoke about that, in one of his talks, that he was filling up helping people because he got so much out of it. So I often say that I'm very, very selfish, because when I'm helping people, and that's really what gave me the bug when I started coaching. Within the first few weeks, I helped a young girl, and it wasn't for money. It was just, I was just practicing. She did end up paying me in the end, but I was just practicing. And I just remember walking out of the meeting with her, and she'd seen something. She'd had what we might call an insight. And I was walking on air. I'm like, wow, people get paid to help people. I mean, this just is amazing, because the payment is just helping them, right? It was so rewarding. And so it's really a joy to be able to do this work, because, you know, I'm getting paid twice. I get paid through just the how satisfying it is to help someone and how rewarding it is. And then I get paid. You know, I get to do this for a living. And so yeah, and by the way, the journey's ongoing. It's not like I saw something, you know, 9 years ago and then that was it. It's I'm continually seeing more about my own potential and what's possible. And so the deeper I go with that, the more I'm able to point other people to that. And maybe a better way of saying it is not that I'm seeing more about my own potential. It's I'm actually dropping continuously thoughts, beliefs, ideas, concepts that are getting in the way. You know, it's not about actually seeing more. It's in a way seeing less. It's kind of you know, just getting rid of the noise, or, you know, cleaning the screen, or whatever, you know, metaphor you want to use. That helps guide me and help me move forward. So I don't know if that kind of makes sense.
Totally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When we met and were talking, you were still having your other job. I was one of your whatever how many 100 hours you wanted to put together on your training, and as you were moving to be a coach, and you were getting married then, and then it was like your life was like, oh my gosh, like everything was changing, and it was beautiful to see that happening. And as you were talking, I was thinking, do you think there's something in relationship between how much we feel paid with the feeling of helping somebody, when we share the principles, that because you were saying that, and absolutely I felt like, oh my God, yeah. It's like actually asking people to pay you twice. And that is a bit of a barrier to ask people for actual money payment. Does that make sense?
Could you clarify the question for me?
So if I share the principles and then I feel this feeling that I've been paid on how rewarding it is. So say I wouldn't ask people to pay me twice for a deep tissue massage, right? If I feel paid, I will feel that is wrong to ask people then to pay me again, money-wise, because this is something that we see a lot around coaches or people that share the principles. I know there's people that haven't done any actually coaching training, as you were saying. You sign up for something that looked like a coaching training, which I did as well. And then maybe there's a different thing about learning the principles, learning how to share the principles, and the whole coaching. So my question is, do you think there's something about feeling happy and paid just by the feeling of helping others, and the thinking of, is it right or wrong to charge for this?
Well, let me kind of generalize it a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the things that was really helpful for me and has continually been helpful for me is that seeing the thoughts I had around money through the lens of the principles. Because I had all sorts of ideas, all sorts of beliefs around money. Some of them now just seem really strange. But, you know, I had an idea, for example, that someone could earn £100,000, up to £100,000 that was okay. But anyone that earned over £100,000, that was just greedy, right? And it was such a strong belief. And I would judge people, especially in this industry, who were making more than that, because I was like, well, that's just wrong. I mean, how much money do you need? You don't need more than that. That's more than enough to have a great life. And then one day I kind of realized that the number is arbitrary. You know, I was speaking to someone who used to be a CEO, and they were paid in their job, I think, 250 or 300,000 pounds a year as a CEO. And so they'd quit that, and they said, oh, we want to get into coaching. And this person said to me, so, you know, I don't need to make like loads of money, but I want to make a couple of hundred. And I just thought, oh, that's just, again, a thought for him, because he'd been making so much. He's like, well, if I make a little bit less, that's fine, but I still want to make a couple of hundred. And I thought, for someone else, it might be 40. And so whatever the number is, it's completely a made up number. It's just totally coming from your thinking, right? And then I kind of kept going with this, and eventually, and I'm sure there's still some thinking there, the whole concept of money just became more and more and more neutral, right? It's just money. And so what that enables me to do professionally is I charge a good fee. I make good money. I'm very comfortable. I'm also really generous, and I don't say that arrogantly. I enjoy being generous. I get to do a lot of stuff and help people where they don't pay me. They never pay me, and it's kind of a weird dichotomy, but it just makes sense to me to do that. And I was able to get there through dropping a lot of my thinking around money. And, you know, whether you look within the 3P community or you look outside of the 3P community, you'll see that, you know, money is an area or an idea around or a concept that people have an awful lot of thinking around, you know, like an awful lot of thinking, right? So, I mean, it's kind of, there's someone said, I don't know if it's true or not, or how they measured it, but money was the number one thing that couples tended to argue about, for example. When I used to have all these thoughts around, again, about, I wanted to run a business in my mid-20s. But I was like, oh, all the good ideas are taken. I can't run a business. Or, you know, again, things about, you know, ideas around charging and all the rest of it. And I wasn't seeing that it was all made up. I really wasn't seeing that. And I mean, even like a year ago, I had limits on my thinking around my own earning. And I challenged those beliefs. I kind of explored them. And I realized that they're made up too. And so when they fell away, you know, it opened me up to potentially making more money or earning more money. But the old me came from a place of, the more I earn, the more I'm worth. Like my self-worth was tied into my income. Whereas now it's not, and it really isn't. So it's kind of strange. I feel the most free I've ever felt around money. And yet I'm kind of making more money than I've ever made before. And I don't think that's a coincidence. And I believe the same would be true if I was in a corporate job, right? Because again, this might sound crazy to people, but I had one of my crazy money beliefs was, the more I earn, the more stress I'm going to encounter. So when there were opportunities to get promoted or go for a higher paid job, I was like, oh, well, that job's paying a lot. There's got to be more stress with it. It's going to be more uncomfortable. It's going to be more work. It's going to be less enjoyable. And it was totally lost on me that over time, my income had kept going up. And that hadn't been the case. It hadn't been less enjoyable. It'd been pretty much the same, or at least it was not really a factor. And again, if I had seen this back in my 20s, I probably would have gone for more opportunities that I held myself back on. And I would have made really good excuses. Well, that's not a good career path for me, or I don't really like that job, or, you know, I don't want to speak for everyone else, but certainly I've been really good at lying to myself, never mind other people. And yet when, you know, that thinking falls away, you can't, it's a lot harder to lie to yourself when you see, you know, your thoughts for what they really truly are, which is transitory, and that we don't have to hold on to them, right? And this is true in every area. I mean, we're just talking about money right now, but this really applies to every area of our lives, right? And so for me, what I love doing, both for myself and for others, is helping them see that, because it's a game changer, you know, like on such a deep level, right? And what I love about this is, you know, I used to believe it was, you know, life was a lot of either ors, right? So I could either be spiritual, or I could be successful in the kind of material world, right? You know, I could either be happy, or I could be successful. Like, there were all these either ors. And what's been beautiful about my journey with the principles is you can have everything, right? Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to, you know, have human experiences and come up against challenges. I do all the time. But really, I've been open up to the, like, why not? And I know one of the things that, and I know, you know, I'll be doing another webinar with you guys with Mark Howard. But one of the things, you know, Mark Howard and I talked about was, if the three principles is this great work and really helps people, why aren't three principles coaches the most sought after and the most highly paid in the world, right? Like, because again, and I had it too, there was a lot of beliefs of, oh, well, if this is really helpful for people, well, then we should be charging as less as possible, and you know, this should be made as freely available as possible. And what I've seen over the years is, you can by all means do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, there was a lot of thinking tied up in that. And yet now, for example, I'm earning a lot more. I get to donate a lot more money to charity. I get to help people for free if I want, because, you know, my material needs are met. And also, I think pretty much in any profession, but certainly in coaching, there's a lot of misunderstanding around charging a lot. In general, if you charge for what you do, you need to deliver the goods. And if you charge a lot and you're struggling to get clients, chances are you're not delivering the goods. And so for me, you know, a lot of my journey has been seeing, one, my thinking dropped away around money, but two, well, what I have to do has to be really not worth what people pay. It has to be worth way more than that. You know, that's what really makes it worthwhile for them, when it's like, oh, I would have paid double for what you helped me see, right? And so a lot of my thinking, if you like, got rewired around money and charging, because I really got to a point where I saw, if someone pays me, it's like the greatest gift to themselves. It's like the greatest thing that could happen for that person, because I know how much I'm going to give them. I know how, like, I can afford to. I mean, I love people. I love helping people. But, you know, if someone just wants a bit of support, I'm happy to give that. But if I'm really going to help someone completely change their life and completely change things, I need to invest more time in that. And you know, time is limited. So, you know, if someone's paying me, I can do that. I get to do that and really help them. And so it's exciting for me when someone signs up with me now, because I know what's going to change, right? And if they don't, I used to get, upset about it, or like I had a conversation today with someone, I won't say who, and they were telling me about someone who's going to be working with them. And I went, oh, that's great. Yeah, I've been speaking to this person too. And they went, oh, I'm not stepping on your toes, am I? Am I? And I was like, not at all. No, 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 not at all. I'm so happy that this person is going to be working with you, because that's going to be great for them. And, whether I work with this person or not is irrelevant. Right. And again, I didn't used to be like that. But when I've dropped my money thinking, it's helped me be less attached to things like that, and more in service to people, more helpful, and really respect people a lot more, because I don't need to sell anything to anyone, right? I just need to allow people to trust their own wisdom to follow what makes sense for them. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's I think what I heard in that is it's about letting go of any kind of made up thinking that you've got, and just let it be. It's like a couple of weeks ago I changed some of my prices that I charge people for driving lessons, and I had so much thinking about it, and then I was just like, well, hang on a minute, is what you do worth it? And it just, as you say, it just hit me, and it was like, yeah, why wouldn't I be charging, more, or changing some of the prices that I'm charging for, like, say, the more hours they pay with me and whatever. And it just kind of made sense. And I've had 2 or 3 new pupils recently that have signed up with me with the new prices. So it can't be that bad that I've made that change.
Right. And for me, there's this, I really saw, I came across a few resources which talked about, money being spiritual, and that really kind of messed with me. I was like, what? No, the spiritual is like non-money, like no, we need to get away from that. And again, I realized how much thinking I had about it. And now I love helping people who have that deep spiritual grounding and deep spiritual knowledge, help them see they can also make money. And again, it's not about being a billionaire, or again, approaching it from money making you happy, because it can't. But really helping people see, well, why not? Why can't you have a good standard of living, whatever that means to you?
Yeah.
Why not? And approaching that from for me, real wealth isn't just money. It's like the whole shebang. It's that peace of mind. It's deep and fulfilling relationships. It's the whole gamut of things. But also it includes being able to more than cover your needs, right? Like I said, I had this thinking for such a long time that spiritual people should be poorer. It sounds crazy now when I say it, but to me it was like, no, if you're really spiritual, you're poor. You don't have a lot of material possessions, and you kind of live very frugally, and again, that's who said who. It's just
Yes.
That's just an idea. And it's funny because I spend a lot less money than I used to on stuff, and when I do spend money on stuff, I have less thinking around it. It's okay. It's allowed. And sometimes I see people complaining about other rich people, and for me it's like, I see that, I'm like, yeah, I want you to be rich. I want you to do well, because then you get to donate, you get to do good things with that. And especially in our profession, I think it's wonderful when coaches do well, because when a coach is doing well, they get to give so much more. Again, years ago I did a podcast on relationships, And at the time when I first started it, it was pretty, poor production values, because I was getting some friends to help me out to do it for free. But over time, towards the end of it, I hired a proper editor, and he did a great job. And now I work with the same guy, and I can pay him to, make things look a lot nicer. And again, a lot of stuff. He's doing something for me right now, where we'll be basically putting out a bunch of videos for coaches for absolutely free. And again, I can do that because my business is able to afford that. And so kind of the better I do financially, the more I can help people, and the more in service I can be to others.
Yeah, I love one of the things we were talking about before we started was about honesty, and how, well, one of the things we absolutely try to be, and we like to be during this series is, and this episode, it's as honest as we can, on in the same way that we tell people, no, we don't live in Disneyland, and we don't live in La La Land, and we're never upset, or we never argue with each other, or we never have whatever, like, we're human beings, so and we are in a human existence, so what you start, my experience is that I still have a lot of thinking, and a lot of gray areas around, for example, charging people or earning money, or how, I don't know if it's spiritual or not spiritual, how right it is, or how wrong it is, okay? So, but what happened for me, and this was the reason why I signed up with Jamie Smart at the end, it was because I thought, well, I can see the principles working this way, and I understand a lot has changed in my life, but what is absolutely a gray area is money. And this guy seems to do very well with money, and I absolutely can't stand him. So it's probably the way I'm supposed to look. He's supposed to be probably my teacher, because I have decided that he is a cowboy with people, and he is stealing money when he charges so much for like a 3-day what is it, intensive, say, for example. A lot of thinking about that. How can you charge somebody, like, for some people, nearly 2 years earnings for 3 days? Okay, so and the thing is that my mailbox keep having more and more emails from Jamie Smart. Oh, hi, Carolina, would you like to sign up for this? No, go away. I don't care. And we were at one of the London conferences. I think you were there that year. And Jamie was in a panel with Michael Neal and Eric Olsen. And then I thought, well, I like Eric and I like Michael. And he was sort of sandwiched in the middle. And I thought, well, maybe if they're happy to talk with him, there's something about him that is remotely good. I don't know, we'll see. And then as I was sitting there, thinking whether I was going to stay or was going to go to another room and listen to somebody else that I thought was more spiritual, I thought, what do you really know about Jamie Smart? And I realized I knew hardly anything. I had made up a lot of thinking about him. I had made a lot of things about him, I haven't given him the chance to even hearing him talk. So I stayed, they talk, and I thought, oh, he's okay. All right. So I thought, well, he's quite okay. He you know, he I should go and talk to him after this, see if it actually matches that what I saw on stage. And I did that. And then still there were a couple of years where I thought, there's no way on earth I can sign up for that because I can't afford it. I can't afford it. And and it was interesting how around me what's happened was, because now I didn't feel so inadequate. I didn't have to prove that I was actually good enough for so many things. As you were saying, Ankush, I started needing this stuff. I stopped thinking so much in terms of money, whether I could afford this or I had enough money for the end of the month or things like that. Stopped dropping. Like they weren't so important. And I remember saying to somebody, how on earth I'm going to pay £7,000 or something of the sort if I never in my life have seen £7,000 altogether? I can't imagine what that looks like in my bank account. And this is one of the things that's quite happy, that quite funny about the principles and synchronicities. 3 days after, my dad says, I'm thinking of going to visit you. And in order to do that, I was thinking, I'm going to put some money in your account if you don't mind. And then I use what I used, and I can give you some to have. And then I can come back to Argentina and bring some if there's much left, because I may go somewhere else in Europe. So he says, I'm going to transfer $10,000. Well, you're going to be very good at guessing how much the exchange was when it came into my account. That was exactly £7,000. So I got goosebumps on how, for the first time, I kept looking at that number in my bank account going, this is some sort of joke. This is ridiculous. Like, how? Okay, so I can't have £7,000 in my account. Okay, they were mine to use. Then I got some that my dad gave me or whatever, but I thought, oh, that was one of the moments that. But also, this series came to be because one of the things on that calmness and that quietness that we had when the first quarantine started here in the UK, I thought, what if we do something for nothing? I was stuck on, unless, because I was in a group where it was like, oh, I signed up my first client for £1,000, or I signed up my first client for £30,000. And I was like, I signed up somebody for 40 quid, and that's not good enough. So in that quietness of things and that calmness, I thought, who says I need to charge anything? Why can we not create something and start from there? So in that way, that allowed us to play around, to have a sandpit, to suddenly this series took form. Yeah. And as you were saying, Ankush, we are giving ourselves the gift of being with amazing teachers and people that are really generous to come in and spend time with us. So sorry, it was a bit of a long story, but I know so many people that that the money part of it, it's still a huge part of being able, as you say, like if you don't have to go to do another job to bring the money to pay your bills, then there's so much else you can do. And there's so much else if you have money to help others. Mm-hmm. It gives you time to be generous. And I really, really loved what you said, Ankush, about the lying to yourself and lying to other people. Because you're not, well, as far as I understand that, you're not thinking, oh, I'm going to lie about this. You're innocently protecting yourself and your family and your loved ones from something that really looks like it would be horrible. Like if you think that if you take that promotion, it's going to take time away from your family, from your well-being, from how much you're going to sleep every day, or how happy you're going to be, then it makes sense not to take it, right?
Right. And like I want to say this too. When I started out, like when I first started out, it was never about the money. It still isn't about the money. Like for me, if I earn in my head, if I earn £30,000, I was like, I can live on that. That in my head, that was like, that's kind of the minimum level I need to live and be okay. I thought, okay, if I can earn £30,000 a year from coaching, that's it. That's all I need. Can I earn 30? If I can earn 30, I'm good. And what's happened is my income's gone kind of, way beyond that. Not because I was trying to, right? It's come about because and this is a funny thing with the principles, it's like stuff changes in your life. Right. And so as I've kept exploring, things have changed and kept changing. And I think what's really been helpful is that, there are no rules. People make up rules, but there are no rules. So I agree with you, doing something for free. I did stuff for free. And what was amusing to me was when I did my first podcast and my business was doing okay, a lot of people assumed I was doing well because of the podcast. And it had nothing to do with it. It really had nothing. I didn't get any clients from doing the podcast. It was more of I just feel like doing this. I think it'd be really helpful for other people and helpful for me. And then a few years later, last year or the year before, I spoke to a colleague and he assumed I was doing badly right, in my business. He goes, how are you doing? And I went, yeah, I'm doing really, I'm so busy. It's crazy. And he went, oh, I assumed you weren't doing very well. And I said, oh, why is that? And he goes, because I don't see you posting as much online. I went, yeah, I don't have time. I'm too busy. And again, we make up all these stories about other people or ourselves, but they're just that, they're stories. And it's funny because a lot of what I thought and what I read and what I was told about growing my coaching practice, I did the opposite. Not completely, but a lot of stuff was different. Like I don't have a big email list. I'm not I'm not doing a lot of what I was told to do. Even now, people are kind of surprised at when they find out a little bit more about what I do in my business. But I've just kept following my wisdom. I've kept following my gut. I've kept following what felt right for me. And there's definitely learnings along the way, but I think that's probably something that every speaker you have on this show will tell you, that this is what's great. We get to trust ourselves again. And I mean, there have been times where everything in the world might have been saying go left, and I just knew go right. And before I came across the principles, I never knew that. Like I never trusted myself because I would make such bad decisions. And whereas now not always, but there are moments where I just get such clear guidance. It's so strong, I can't ignore it. And it's always steered me in the right direction. It always has. And it's in a weird way, it's not about doing what I do, right? Because it's not about the decisions I made. It was the right decisions for me. And again, for everyone listening to this is about being able to tap into that and trusting the right decisions for you. And to me, it's because that knowing, that guidance, that wisdom, it's always there for all of us. Our kids have it. They're always guided by that. It's just that we have so many beliefs and ideas and thinking and what I call misunderstandings, that it just gets in the way, that we can't hear that signal. And there's some real woo-woo stuff that's happened. My wife and I are looking to buy our first house together, and we've been looking for a year and a half, and we've lost out on a few houses. And earlier this year, we put an offer on a house. It was the asking price. They'd accepted, and so we had a minor disagreement with them. They said they were going to move out by a certain date, and they came back and said no. Anyway, we'd agreed it all. We went to bed, and I said to my wife, we're going to lose this house tomorrow. And she went, what do you mean? But they've agreed. I said, I don't know. I just have this real clear knowing we are not going to have this house. And the next day in the afternoon, I get a call from the estate agent, and he said, oh, the vendor doesn't want to sell anymore. And I said, can you tell us more? Why? And he just said, no, they just don't want to sell it to you. And it was weird because my wife was upset about it, and I was a little bit, it's not, this is a shame. But I was like, I just knew that wasn't the direction. That wasn't what was meant to be. And I was never like that. People would tell stories like this, and I'm like, whoa, what kind of woo-woo stuff have they been doing? And is that true? Is that BS? But I've started to see that we can all do that. We can all have access to that. And I mean, this is from back in the day in 2013. I was just starting my coaching practice, and my boss said to me, because everyone was having to reapply for their jobs, and he got the job, so he really wanted to keep me, and he knew about what I was learning a bit, and he said, look, if you stay here, we'll give you a pay rise, and one day a week you can teach this stuff in the organization. It was like a no-brainer. Why wouldn't I do that? And because I didn't know that I'd have a job, I was looking elsewhere, and I got kind of a dream job in London. Dream job in terms of corporate, not dream job in terms of coaching. And so if I looked at it logically, it would have made sense to stay in my current job. I knew it inside out, take the pay rise, and coach. And something in me went, move to London. And it was just a knowing. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm moving to London. And in hindsight, career-wise, it probably would have made sense not to do that. But if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have met my wife. Maybe that's why I was meant to go, right? Who knows? And, the same thing when I met my wife. Neither of us were looking to get married. It just kind of, we both joked around, well, we'll probably this relationship probably end in a few weeks, knowing us two and our track records. And again, one day when I had no intention of, proposing or getting married, because, I was really fully focused on my business. And again, I had a knowing. And the way the proposal worked out and everything, it just kind of worked out as if it was always meant to be that way, and again, I don't want to give people the impression that I kind of walk on water and I live my life like this. I don't. I get caught out all the time. About half an hour before recording, I wanted to break down and cry because my son didn't want to go to bed and I was so frustrated. But it's kind of like we can have those moments, but behind that is just, perfection. It's wisdom. It's, dare I say it, God. It's that kind of access to the divine nature of the universe, right? And I don't even know what I'm saying, right? Like, those are just words, and I'm still only getting glimpses of that. But the more I do, it's beautiful, and it's kind of less of the concept of me. I'm not saying less of me, it's more of me, but it's less of the concept of me, right? And more of the true me. With this webinar is about our true potential. Well, that's the true bit, right? It's kind of before all of the thinking, right? Because I had this concept of me, even you introduced me as Kush. There's some people might know this. I haven't spoken about it for a while. My first girlfriend gave me the nickname Kush, and I didn't like it. And when she and I split up, it wasn't a mutual decision. I got dumped, and I hated it, and I felt very upset about it, because I was like, I was a good guy, how could I get dumped? And so that name Kush, it kind of really grated me, because it reminded me of her, and it had a painful memory. And then I remember a few years later, and this is way before the principles, I was kind of reinventing myself. I was kind of recreating myself. And I went, okay, this is not Ankush, this is Kush. I made up this personality called Kush, and Kush went and kind of was this confident guy, and Kush was kind of doing all these things. And I spoke to that girl or something, like, or she heard or something happened. And I remember speaking to her, and she goes, oh, and she was really surprised. How come you're talking about yourself, or you refer to yourself as Kush? I thought you didn't like that. And I was like, well, things change. And even back then, I could see my thinking around anything could change, or certainly around my name. And because I'm not my name, I'm not Kush, I'm not Ankush. There's the me that was before I was given a name, right? There's the me that's gonna, that's not my body, right? And that's when we access that. That's what I'm talking about, our true potential. And because that part of me doesn't know limits, right? It's like, I think about this sometimes, with my son. It's like, he doesn't have concepts right now. He's not even 2 years old. He doesn't have concepts of anything, like, he's just gaining stuff now, like, a little bit. And the same was true of me. Like, how many of us when we were kids, like, well, I want to be an office manager, or I worked in procurement. I want to work for a construction company in procurement. Like, I didn't know what that was, right? It was like, we little boys, we want to be a hero, we want to be this, we want to be that. And I remember, funny enough, when I was at school, so many times I was like, I want to be a teacher, because I really didn't like my teachers, and I thought I could do a better job. Maybe loads of kids think that. And I'm not a teacher, I'm a coach, but in many ways there's a lot of teaching in my job. And so that was like, and I think about it, I'm like, wow, there was something in me even back then that was maybe drawn to this. But I didn't, as a kid, I wouldn't have said coach. I didn't know what coach was. But I knew there was something about kind of guiding people and helping them get the best out of them. And I used to be in a youth group when I was 17, 18. And I remember I used to kind of look after the boys' youth group, and someone else used to look after the girls one. And the naughty kids, I would love, being in charge of them, because I was like, I'm you. You can't mess with me. They'd mess with the other leaders, right? The youth group leaders. And I was like, you can't mess with me, because I used to be like you. I know how you think. And and again, in many ways, that's what's kind of happened with coaching. I don't buy into people's stories of like they're not enough, right? Because that's not true. I thought I was not enough. If you had said to me, or you'd said to other people when I was at university, I'm going to be doing this, and I've written a book, and I'm going to get interviewed, and so, they would have laughed their heads off. Like, of all the people, there's no way that would have been me. I was so insecure, like really, like I never went to a psychologist, but I'm sure if I got analyzed by a psychologist when I was younger, I would have been off the charts, right? I couldn't look at people in the eye. I used to walk around staring at my feet. I used to overanalyze situations. I remember, like, if someone said something to me, I'd think for 3 days, I could have said this, I could have had a good comeback, and I would ruminate over it, over and over and over again. And so, again, a lot of, for me, is like, if I can change, and I talk so many times, my clients laugh at me, like I probably shouldn't, I'm not going to tell the story, like, but there are stories. Okay, I'll tell you a bit of the story, right? When my clients tell me stuff that happened to them, I'm like, I got worse stories than that, right? So I had a client who was struggling with dating, and I said, have you ever lit a girl's tights on fire? And he went, no. I have. I've done that. Right? And I don't need to say more than that, but like, just absent-minded. I used to do things absent-mindedly all the time. And my client even said to me, he goes, you know what, no matter how bad my dating's going, he goes, thank you, coach. He goes, at least I think I never lit a girl's tights on fire. Right?
That was when you were little, or it was
no, when I should have known better, when I was probably in my mid-20s.
Oh, okay.
Right?
And like some strange fetish thing.
No, it was really not. It was really not. Like, I was hanging out with some people. It's not that bad. I was hanging out with some people, and they were smoking, and we were in a hotel room, and they'd left the lighter, and I was just absentmindedly, like, with a lighter, and this girl was like, lying there, and I don't even know why. I just went like that, like almost to scare someone. And I hadn't realized tights are made of polyester. You do that, and her whole went on fire. And luckily, we put it out immediately, and she went ballistic, as you can imagine, rightly so. And why'd you do that? And I was like, I don't know. But here's the funny thing, like, I used to do stuff like that all the time. And then what would happen is I would have such negative self-talk. You're an idiot. Who does that? Why did you do that? And I'd feel terrible about myself. And in fact, like, if I started dating someone, I would tell them, I'm probably going to do something really stupid while we're dating. I don't know what it is. It's not because I'm a bad person. And they would like, what are you, some kind of weirdo? And I'm like, no, I do things when afterwards, I don't know why I did that, and I'm so much more loving of myself now, and I don't do so many things like that anymore. I don't know why. I remember, like, it was almost like a nervous tick, in a way. I was so insecure that I would just kind of listen to my thinking and just do stupid things, right? Or bug people. Or I used to love getting a rise out of people, so I would say stuff to people that I know would irritate them. But again, it was my insecurity. It's completely my insecurity. And it was funny, when I first started coaching, a number of my clients were people who knew me from before, which I never would have expected them to work with me. But they saw such a change in me from who I was before, that they were just like, we want to talk, like, what happened to you? Like, this is not the guy we knew a few years ago. What is going on? And so I would talk to them, but it's funny because people meet me now and they make all these assumptions about me, and I'm like, you've got no idea, what I was like, and no idea, some of the stuff I've done, and my clients do, some of them. But yeah, it's it's and I think that's good. I think it's helpful. I let people know, and I tell people I struggle. Like when my son was born, I really struggled to, at the beginning. And it's funny because people, and the same thing as when I got married, right? And I was this principal guy. I was like, yeah, great. I got relationships down. And then we got married, and like little things we'd argue about, like filling the washing machine too much, or the way that you stack the dishes, right? Or little things that I would get annoyed about, or my wife would get annoyed about. And I found it really difficult, like really difficult. It really hit my ego. And so sometimes I would do talks for groups of men or something, and they're like, oh yeah, you're married, how is it? And I was like, it's really tough. And a lot of time people would be shocked. And even about, being a dad, anytime I'm asked about being a dad, I'm like, it's been the hardest thing. It's been really rewarding. I love my son more than anything. And it's been really tough. And I think it's important to have that side of things too for people to see, because whilst we're talking about everything I said before is true and valid, it's also a journey, and there's real life too. And to me, the principles is really just a guide, because when I come up against something that is really challenging and difficult, it's because I've got a misunderstanding, right? There's something for me to see and learn in that. And that's what I've seen in so many ways, and still seeing it, in my relationship with my wife, or in me being a dad. And it's funny, I never used to put my son to bed, and I could see, last year my wife needed a bit more support and she was going back to work, so I said, all right, I'll do that. And I was terrified of it. I was like, oh my God, she's really good, I'm going to be terrible, I don't know how to. And now it's an honor. Even tonight, as you know, Carolina, it was difficult, and some days he doesn't go down, and I had to get onto this call, but it's a privilege, to be with him. And there's so many, this is what I call miracles in my life, because again, for me to go from what I was like to feel like it's a privilege to put him to bed, that wasn't like going from here to here. That's like going from there to like there. Like it was a huge gap. It's kind of like that's just happening everywhere. And again, I'm talking a lot about me because that's the only thing I can talk about with authority. But everyone I speak to who comes across this work, like it's the same for them. It's we're all stepping into that. We're all seeing more. We're all seeing what's truly possible. And I'm sure I'll keep doing that, for the next, however many years or decades that I'm on this earth.
I think what we could do is let people, if they want to, unmute themselves and ask a question. In the meantime, I totally hear you. My daughter is 17, going 18. It's the toughest thing I've done in my life. I think if I was told how hard it was going to be, and I don't know, like you wouldn't do it probably, or, I had one because it was really hard and not more. I wanted like 4 or 5, but it's been the most rewarding and loving and incredible thing that's happened to me. I never thought I would dedicate my whole life to to her and absolutely give up like what I thought it was me, that was my career as an actress. I thought that's who I am. It just got me out of, and still today, like it's really hard, like, and you know, it's been like nearly 9 years with Wayne next to me, and he's also been, you know, like having part of that. And now I also remember that Ankush has had a lot to do with us as well, being together. And you may not know, but your relationship podcast, where it's not like now that we all had podcasts. Podcast was a thing that was just about starting, and yours was about the only podcast that was around, especially around the principles. Not around, just in around. There were other podcasts just starting, but yours was a really good new thing, and I listened to that, and it was really eye-opening. It was really touching. I remember there was oh wow. So you see, what you thought probably was starting as a very simple thing. It's a very, what it may have felt a bit of an amateur thing. Like, it was still from the very first episode, it was just like boom, you know. So I don't know if there are any questions, so please feel free to mute.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that podcast was I had so much thinking about it, and the one thing that the principals helped me do was not take that so seriously, but it was still uncomfortable. And after I did the first few episodes, you know, I asked my family, what do they think of it? And I just got a whole list of like, you know, you do this wrong, that's not good, this needs to be better. Like, you keep saying a lot, you keep saying a lot, you know, that's not smooth. You need to think of new adjectives, you keep using the word interesting too much. And you know, it was like, oh great, you know. And and it was funny because even though that they were saying that, like, other people were saying, oh my god, this is brilliant, great, please keep it up. And you know, I got to see that I could just carry on with it, like keep going and keep learning. And like I said, I cringe when I hear the first, you know, few episodes, but if I've ever gone back and listened to them, but you know, towards the end, they were pretty good. I would like to think I was pretty proud of them in terms of what they developed to. But you have to kind of go through that process, and I think so many of us don't. We don't try. We don't start. I remember a lady saying to me years ago around my Facebook group, she goes, Ankush, I wish I had your confidence. And I said, no, you've got it wrong. I don't. And I don't think she understood. You know, we were just on Messenger. And I was like, no, I'm petrified. Like, I was so scared of being visible as a coach. Like, people have no idea. I was so scared. And I remember the first event I ever did where I got a little bit visible as a coach. I ran it stupidly, in hindsight, around dating, and for women. And one of my cousins saw it online, and she commented like, "Oh, is this just a ruse for you to find yourself a girlfriend?" And it was like the worst. Which doesn't sound that bad now, to be honest. I would find that quite amusing. But back then, it was like the worst thing. I stared at the screen. I was like, do I delete this? Do I not? Do I delete it? Do I not? And I just kind of like crawled under my, you know, like I wanted the ground to like swallow me up, or it was horrible, you know. And I lost friends over this. There was one of my good friends, her husband, he would comment like jokey comments on my Facebook posts. And eventually I had to message him. I said, hey, buddy, hope you're well. And, haven't seen each other for a while, but do you mind not doing that? Because I'm trying to run this as a business, and I'm sure you can understand, would appreciate it. He never replied. He unfriended me. He stopped talking to me. I haven't met him ever since. But you've got to go through that. And again, like, oh man, if I could tell you some of the stuff, like I had this guy years ago, like a few years after that, and I've been coaching for a while. And I posted something. I run this men's group on Facebook, and he sent me this message, which was like, if you wanted to hit all of my insecurities in that message, or in that message, this is what I see in you. You're not a coach. You think you're a coach. I've been waiting for you to step up, and I bet you're a good girlfriend to your wife. I was posting pictures of myself, basically my underwear, because I was working out and I wanted to be accountable to the group. And I went, right, this is really uncomfortable, but this is how I look. And I'm every 3 months, I'm going to post a picture of my stats. And I was super like scared about doing that, but it encouraged other men to do that too. And this guy was like, felt mocking my appearance. And again, I just was like, that really hurt. And then I would tell other people, and they're like, well, that's got nothing to do with you. That's about him. But it still felt like that. But it's like I've had to kind of walk through that to kind of get to a place where I'm not as bothered. Does that mean I wouldn't be bothered by anything? No, I'm still human. But it's like it's kind of like the price you pay. And this is where, to me, the principles meets reality, right? Like the principles is an understanding. That's how life works. That's how we experience life. And then there's reality, right? Which is how we experience it, or what I call like real life. And we're constantly, or at least for me, it's like bouncing between the two. It's like, yeah, I think I understand the principles, and then bam, right, I'm hit by my ego, right? Or bam, I'm hit by something else. And it's constantly bouncing, between that and seeing more all the time, right? And seeing blind spots that I didn't realize. And that's the thing about blind spots. None of us really know. We might have an inkling about one or two ideas, but you don't really know where you don't see the principles, because you don't see it. And what's so beautiful about this journey for me is that we keep getting to see more. Right? I keep getting to see more. And it would be surprising, except it's been such a constant for me. I say this to my clients. I'm what, 9 years into this journey, and I'm still seeing more. Constantly. And it's not small things, it's things I have insights about, and I'm like, wow, that's huge. That's a really big thing. I had one around forgiveness, earlier this year, where it was so subconscious to me. I was judging, funnily enough, this goes back to the money conversation. I was judging some people in my life that I don't really talk to anymore, but from when I was younger, who were very wealthy. And I was judging them for being shitty individuals, basically, let's say that. And what I hadn't seen was that my judgment of them was having me reject everything about them, including being wealthy, right? And I still had this thinking, well, if I really get wealthy, and it's funny because I'm doing better than I've ever done, but no, to go to the next level, then I might turn into one of those shitty individuals like them. And it was until I saw it, I was totally oblivious to it. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, yeah, that's what I've been doing. How ridiculous. And I can just forgive those people because they were just doing what makes sense to them, that they were just doing whatever their thinking was telling them to do. And I don't need to be best friends with them. I don't need to hang around with them, but that's fine. They're living in their own reality, but I don't need to reject them. That's what we do when we judge other people, but it's often just really affecting us, again, that was a huge blind spot for me, and it probably still is. There are probably going to be more insights to come out of that for me.
I like that because what I've seen during my own journey, and I think probably I can I can say I've seen both of us.
Yeah.
Is there moments where I will say this is the way I think it works for me, or that's how it manifests for me. When I'm ready to sort of see that hidden thing that I don't want to see, and it has my ego is like, okay, we're gonna look at all of this, but not that one. Something brings me to my knees.
Yeah.
Something like that message that you are describing, Ankush.
Mm.
Something like that gets me like head on something that I'm like, no, that, and I have a horrible argument with myself. Well, what is my understanding about the principles, and how can I not forgive, and why am I so blah 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 blah, and I give myself a really hard time, and I feel very hurt, and what does this mean about me and about what I do, and or other things, relationships, like when I came to understand the principles, the relationship with my mom got incredibly great. We had we have a very loving relationship with my mom. It's always been very, very hard. But once I started getting into this, our relationship started to get really smoothly, really like, also like two women talking to each other without sort of having, one being more important than the other, or two professionals. She's a psychologist, and she started listening to things about like, or asking me about a client and saying, look, how do you see that?
Mm.
And me, like we always had that beautiful conversation. And about 2 years ago, for something I can't even understand how, our relationship's gone really down the drain to a place that she's very distant. She's become really, in a way, I don't know if aggressive, but like sort of distant and horrible. She'll say really horrible things. I can't believe they come from my mom. And I find myself spending tons and tons of time, less and less, luckily, but in my head, as you were saying, ruminating on what should I say, having conversations with my mother, who is all the way on the other side in Buenos Aires, who we actually maybe sent a message to each other or in a group, and I'm like, so, and then I have to see that maybe, well, all that seems so okay and so polished and so okay in my life around relationships and connections. And I will say that I can connect and love and forgive so many people, but this I can't now. This is a new one for me to see. And there's a constant at the moment to let go and to see or find myself. This morning I have something that was really amazing, because coming from a Freudian and psychologist mother and tons of therapy throughout my life in that way, dreams were always very important. So dreams were something you would take to your session and discuss them, and they will talk about what's in your unconscious and have information, and still, I took that in a way seriously. And also then later, like in a spiritual way, I owe their messages from the universe or something. And this morning, I had very vivid dreams last night, and they seemed like they were telling me something about what I should do and what decisions I should take about certain things. And then I thought, who said that is true? For the first time in my life this morning, I said, that is as made up as anything I can make up on the spot right now. Nothing, unless I found a certainty that you were talking about, Ankush, in me, that tells me in the moment that that's the way to go. That's the only time I will know what is the right decision. So there's constantly more and more to see and uncover.
Yeah, it's so true. You know, it's so true, and I'm really glad that you're willing and able to share that with people. It's a real service for people to know, you know, that, you know, we're all human. We're all still figuring it out. And like you said, you know, Sydney Banks was human too. Everyone, you know, we forget that, but those who knew him say that too. And that was really helpful for me, because it wasn't about being perfect, because we're not, you know, but this is the human experience. And so, yeah, I mean, it's great that we can really go through this human experience of life and, you know, keep learning, keep seeing new, keep seeing things fresh. Certainly would be boring if we knew it all.
Yeah, I think, you know, like everything was sort of like, so I know we don't like it when we go through those downs, and then, but we wouldn't tell that the ups are the ups, I guess. Right? If it wasn't that contrast, it's like we couldn't tell there's light if there wasn't darkness. And I know this been said probably 1,000 times, but we forget about the contrast. We forget about how valuable it is to go from, gosh, I don't know how to put my son to sleep, to this is the most precious time of my day, right? It's an incredible achievement. That is the Nobel Prize of parenthood, right? That is, any human being that can go from that to that deserves a monument. You know, we don't see how important those little things are. How to be able to be like, I don't know how on earth I'm going to do this today, and go onto this episode and talk. Well, everything seems, I'm hungry, I need to eat, my son's not going to sleep, blah, 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 blah. And then being here able to, you know, offer us all this lovely, lovely wisdom you have, and be here enjoying your time with us. Oh, somebody's come in a little bit late. Okay. And Ankush, I know it's quite late, and I don't know if any of the people here want to. Claire is looking at the screen. I don't know if she's.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sitting in the dark now. It's gone really dark in here. I just want to say, Ankush, thank you so much. Your story is so inspiring. I can't imagine that there was a time where, you know, that you were insecure, really, because you certainly don't come across like that. And you know, just hearing all your stories, really, it just it just gives a lot of hope. So I just want to thank you. And I have discovered your relationship podcast in the past year. So I've only been exposed to the principles for a year now. And it certainly doesn't come across as amateur to me. I love that podcast. So thank you so much. I'm glad you haven't taken it down.
No, thank you for the feedback. And I keep everything up. You know, maybe I shouldn't say this, but if you're Facebook friends with me, you can go back. You can see someone said to me, you should take these old pictures down of you going out clubbing and, you know, being around drunk people and whatever. And I was like, no, I don't want to present something fake, right? I don't want to present something that I'm not. And so all of my stuff is on, like, I haven't changed when I got married. Like, everything is still the same as what it was. And you know, I released a book a couple of years ago, and one of the greatest compliments was, in inverted compliments, was from my mom, because she was reading it, and I said, so Mom, how are you finding it? And she goes, I'm really struggling to read it. And I said, why? And she goes, like, she was like, it's uncomfortable because you know, you're my baby, right? And she never talks like this either, right? It's like, my mom doesn't talk like that, but she's like, no, you're my baby. And it's like she was feeling vulnerable on my behalf reading it. And I knew I had to kind of do that. In fact, I got some great feedback when I wrote the book that, you know, put more of you in that. And I think it's helpful because I think that's more helpful to be real, right? Than trying to present something, because it's not presenting something that I'm not. It's not useful. It's not helpful. It's more work for me to try and put on a fake persona. And I really tried to do that for so long. I mean, really, for so long, and it was exhausting. It's exhausting, you know, trying to pretend to be, you know, more confident or cool or, you know, whatever, all the time. And then someone would say something and I would I used to take things to heart all the time. And someone say to me, I'd take it to heart, and I would, you know, ruminate on it, or you know, this is still a bit uncomfortable to say, sometimes I'd cry myself to sleep, and I'm not talking when I'm a kid, right? Because I would take things so personally, and I was trying so hard to present this, you know, polished version of myself. And you know, even today I was talking to someone about you know, because I do these men's retreats and immersions. I was talking to someone who was thinking about attending, and I was saying, you know, one of the things I learned in my 20s was about like masculine energy, feminine energy, this, that, and a lot of men stuff talk about that. And I said, I was still trying to create something, and I didn't see that it was already there, right? And you know, a lot of the work that I do with men, I'm like, I let them say, like, just drop, you can drop it all, whatever it means to be manly, it's all made up.
Yeah.
And you and that's the same for women, by the way, as well. It's like it's all made up. It's all made up. And it you know, it's actually harmful, you know, to us, the misunderstanding.
And you can't connect with people with that bullshit anyway, you know what I mean? It's just so strikingly obvious when people are being fake and trying so hard, and it just puts up a barrier, so it just doesn't work. But I have your book here.
Sweet Sherry, look at that.
I haven't. I've only just started it. I've only just started it, Ankush. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, yeah. Let me know. Let me know what you think of it. And,
yeah, will do.
Yeah, I'm actually writing another one at the moment, but it's a different one. It's more aimed at coaches, and it's, funnily enough, a lot of, again, what we've been talking about, because again, I think a lot of people make all these assumptions around, oh, it must have been easy or straightforward or this, that, and the other. And even now people do make assumptions, and it's nothing like that whatsoever. And it's a lot of I just hope it's a little bit inspirational for some people, because I really do believe it. I know a lot of people say this, hey, if I could do it, anyone can do it, but it really is. And I think I should sometimes wheel out my friends that have known me 20 years plus, because they're the ones that would and they're all very brutally honest. They'll kind of tell you, I'm probably downplaying it really, but they could tell you what I was like. And so that's kind of why I know, that's why I know the potential of the principles. I know the potential in people, because I've lived it. It's not intellectual, and it's not over. I've often said that, when I was starting coaching, and this is kind of like 11, 12 years after I got into personal development, and had hired coaches and had done expensive trainings, and got value from them as well. What I was imagining would be possible for me, like, I've gone way past that, right? And again, I don't say that to show off. I say it's like, wow, like, God, how amazing is that? It's unbelievable. And it's like, God, I'm still going. Like, now it's all bonus, it's all great, but to me it's like that. But that's the possibility for all of us. And I say this to some of my men. I'm like, there's no reason why someone who's in my group, who's just a lower level employee, for argument's sake, why they can't be a CEO if they wanted to. Or someone could go and, if they're really interested, I did have a client who's interested in this, go and become a politician and whatever, because the principles really helps us. Like you say, it helped me drop a lot of my fakeness. And I think, this is going off on a different tangent, but I think we're all craving that, in many ways, whether you agree or disagree with certain populist politicians that have been around, in the last few years. Part of the reason why they've appealed to such large chunks of the popular is that they've not been filtered. They've not tried to be polished. They've not tried to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And whether you do agree or disagree is it's still something that I observe. I'm like, there is this craving, I think, for real connection in so many spheres. I remember when I worked for a construction company many years ago, our CEO, he sent us an email on a Saturday morning, and the title was, "I feel sick." And what happened was one of our suppliers on one of our sites had killed someone, because that was what happened in construction. It was very dangerous, and it was totally not polished. It was not gone through the corporate thing, and it probably they would have advised him not to send it. But that real communication hit everyone in the company in a way that something else couldn't. And this guy had just like worked his way up through the ranks. He was a real salt of the earth guy, and you could feel that, I see that in so many spheres, that we could do with that. It would be so helpful to have that. And I'm also a believer that we don't need millions of people to have an understanding of the principles for this to impact people. Sydney Banks said if 100 people really got it, the world would change overnight. And I really believe that, because there's so many ripples that are occurring, and I see this I say to my clients, if I work with them, I'll say, this isn't just for you, this is for your wife, this is for your kids, this is for your colleagues. Like, everyone's going to feel the difference in you, because we live in an interconnected world. We're not just in our little silos on our own, even though it sometimes feels that way.
I have a question because I know there's somebody that it's always here but probably couldn't be here today, and it keeps coming to me, so I'm gonna ask it. Um, for somebody that comes from, say, a background, for example, an Indian background, and they have um, this this cultural sort of relationship about having to be good in a certain way, like having to be good enough or prove that they are they are uh, right for that way of being or thinking, or they have constantly to have to prove that. Was there like anything that you have coming from your ethnicity or your cultural background growing up, or that you would say um, change had a way of the way that you were seeing life, or maybe not? Maybe that didn't have anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, my parents were both born in India. My dad came over here when he was, I think, a few years old. My mom came over when she got married. They both had an arranged marriage, you know, which was normal in those days in my culture. So there are cultural influences, you know, certainly that I've been born and brought up with. What happened was when I learned about the principles, I got more of a appreciation for my culture. And like Sydney Banks said, you know, once you see this, you start seeing truth everywhere, and I got to see that. But it also helped me to be selective, or I think discernment is the right word. I was able to become more discerning around what parts of, you know, my cultural upbringing and background were useful to me and helpful, and what parts I could discard because they weren't all helpful. You know, you know that there were parts of it that weren't, parts of it that weren't. You know, it's funny. I don't really think of myself as you know, an Indian coach or a BAME coach, or like I'm just me, and we've all got different backgrounds and upbringing, and that influence the way we show up in the world, and maybe our metaphors or our examples or whatever. But that's cool, you know. It's that's just part of it. And you know, it's funny because I've coached some Indian coaches who live in the UK, and normally they've got the same color skin of me, that, you know, they're born and brought up in this country like I am, and we're very different, you know, completely different. And the same for non-Indian clients that I have, you know. And again, that's what's beautiful about this. And I got interviewed recently, and I was talking about racism and how you know, I had a lot on that as well. I had a lot of thinking around racism. I had a lot of thinking about you know, what my family went through in India, and you know, my granddad, sorry, you know, was fighting the British to get out of India back in the day, and you know, had to you know, he spent a night in jail over it and stuff like that. You know, there's all sorts of interesting history. And again, I held on to a lot of stuff around that. You know, there were stories that I was brought up with, and again, it's like it's interesting, not even helpful. It's interesting, and what I love about the principles is they're principles. They're facts, and I can discern through those facts anything else. And that's, by the way, true for anything. You know, the principles is really my foundation, and I can look at anything and discern and take what's useful. So even things that I would have discarded, which are non-3P based, now I can look at it and take what's useful from that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, Absolutely. Ankush, we love you so much.
Thank you.
You are amazing. We are so lucky that we're going to have you again by the end of this series with Mark Howard, who we love so much too, and that you created this course that you're going to talk about then. So I won't say anything. So before we finish this episode, where can people find you?
The best way is probably my website, which is ankushjain.co.uk. So that's ANKUSHJAIN.co.uk. I'm quite active on Facebook, so that's another place people can connect with me. But my website has kind of links to pretty much every other way to get hold of me. So yeah, that's probably the best portal.
So you have many people here saying thank you very much. That's been an absolute amazing conversation. They really relate to what you've been sharing. And your book is called?
It's called Sweet Sharing, Rediscovering the Real You. So that's available on Amazon.
That's available on Amazon, and it's an amazing book. So I really recommend that. I'm going to tell you what's happening, and then I would like to close with a poem that is what Ankush sent me on our first conversation. A poem that since then, so this has lived, Ankush, as I said, 9 years next to my bed on the set of drawers. Since you sent it to me, I printed it and I put it there. So and every single day I have it there to see it, to read it, and to remind me. And it reminds me of you, inevitably. So so first, thank you so much for being here with us today. And we are going to have a bit of a break. So Ankush is closing this first part of series 6 on episode 5, and then he will be back to close with Mike Howard at the end of the series on episode 10. We are going to take a little bit of a break, so because we haven't stopped.
No.
We haven't stopped.
No.
So, and we're going to be back on the 8th of September with Steve Adair, who is going to talk about love and a bit of a second part of what we started with Yael Abramson, and about love and what's love before form, and a bit of his experience about the principles, his relationship. And so if you're curious, please tune in with us on the 8th of September. So Ankush, we love you so much. I can't say it enough. I'm really moved that we have you here today. So this is the gift that Ankush sent me, and we also share it for everybody else. It's a poem by Anne-Marie Williamson, and it says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frighten us. We asked ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberate others. So thank you very much, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.